What's up, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of the 1% Strategy. I'm here with Crispy Q. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing spectacular. I'm doing spectacular. Get ready to get started with our conversation as we discover what it takes to become the 1% in business and in life. You know what I mean? That's what we're
Right.
studying.
Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. And so, in our path to become the 1%, especially in business, I think one of the very important book that every 1%ers need to read is How the Mighty Fall by Jim Collins. So before we dive into the book and dissect it, what really stood out for you?
So, when kind of looking at this book, what really stood out to me was just there almost seems to be like a formula for failure. You know how there's like a formula for success? This is
Mm-hmm.
like the book that tells you the formula of how to fail. I
Mm-hmm.
before I didn't really know that there was like a formula for it. I thought that either it would happen through just getting outbeat by somebody that's better than you, or somebody like neglecting a certain part of their job and that like stacking up to lead to failure. But what I learned through this book is that pretty much every company, every juggernaut that has been in business that has failed has gone through these five steps. And I think that this is just very important because if you know the five steps, you have a way to know how to avoid them. You know what I mean? So that was one of the
Right.
that kind of stood out to me. What about for you, my good man?
Well, there's many things that stood out for me, but one quote that really resonated with me, it says the following: a core a core business that meets a fundamental human needs and at which you've become the best in the world really become obsolete. So meaning there's two things, right? There's two components to this code. Number one is if you find a way to reach out to the core needs of humans, and then the second thing, you become the best at it, it's very, very difficult for you to become obsolete, meaning your door's always going to be open, right? And so there's another story that I really love uh, that talks about the new CEO of HP in 1993 as he was appointed. Different magazine wanted to have conversation with him, and he said something very interesting. He said, "No, thank you. We are going dark for a while. While we assess the task at hand." So basically, what he's saying that let's shut all the noise and let's get at the work. So that's something that was truly interesting to me. And so, with that being said, let's get into those stages. Unless there's something you want to add on that.
Oh no, 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 no. I think that was very profound. Let's get straight into it. So like as what we were talking about, we got five stages. We got five stages. So what we're gonna kind of do, we're gonna kind of list all five, and then we'll kind of like discuss which each of the five and like how it affected companies and how to avoid them and how you can apply it in your own businesses. So stage one is hubris, born of success. Stage two, the undisciplined pursuit of more. Stage three, the denial of risk and peril. Stage four, grasping for salvation.
Mm.
And then stage five is going into irrelevancy. So, my good man Sam, the first stage is hubris born of success. Now, when reading this chapter, there was like a variety of stories, a variety of good information, good points, good morsels of information that we could chew on.
Mhm.
What would you say were your thoughts when you read that chapter?
Probably one thing that stood out to me is just the concept of hubris, born of success, right? And so the author makes a very powerful argument, which is the reason why companies start their decline is because they were victim of their own success.
Mm,
meaning that because of the success that they previously, accumulated, they kind of feel entitled to continue succeeding. But not only that, they become arrogant and they lose sight of the underlying fact of what made them successful. And so because of that, that decline actually starts.
mm,
And so in their mind, they say we are successful because we do such and such and such. While in reality, things has to be different, right? It has to be uh, stated in this following way. We are successful because we understand this about our customer and under which situation or which condition this would not work anymore. So once organization lose sight of that insight, that's when the decline starts.
for sure. Nah, absolutely. As you were kind of saying that, it kind of brought my mind, sports is like an analogy towards business, right? It kind of brought my
Mhm.
mind to one of the legends. So I'm out in like Southern California. One of the sports legends out here, Kobe Bryant, right?
Mhm.
And one quote that I recall from like reading about him, he said once he got to the NBA, he realized that these guys really don't work. I don't know what that just was, but these guys really don't work. These guys really don't work for what they want. It's like he
Mhm.
had like a vision of what the work ethic was for people who were the best in the world. But what he found is that the mentality for when most of these people got to the NBA was an I made it mentality. I did enough to make it, so now I can just coast. And that was one of the reasons why Kobe was so successful because he never reached that point. And bringing it back to like the whole business thing, it's like relating to what you were talking about with businesses not necessarily thinking that they have to do much more because they already reached like a certain level. That's literally leaving them time to get caught up to by people who are more hungry and
Right.
are more uh, desirous of success. So yeah, I definitely thought that that was like a interesting point
Yeah.
that you brought up in those terms.
Yeah. In business, you never have to stay hungry. Always have to stay hungry, right? Always on the grind, always keep on improving because if you do not grow, you actually die,
Right.
right? There's no middle ground. So as a business, every single day you have to ask the question, how do I actually make my organization, my team better? And so that is actually one of the arguments that Tim Collins makes in this section. He talks about the fact that in organization, people always have to learn, continue developing new skills, new ideas, never stop thinking about how things can be done better. But there's also something that I like to bring up, which is the fact that people or organization, when they achieve a certain level of success, they kind of start looking at different opportunities. And so because they look at different opportunities, they neglect their core business. And so they become less intense, less intentional about their core business. And because of, again, their success, they think that by being less intentional about their core business, they will still be able to succeed, which is actually not the case.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that honestly leads us really well into the second stage of decline, which is the undisciplined pursuit of more. It's like
Hmm.
the it's really easy in this culture, in this hustle culture that we live in, to always want more, to always strive for more, to always build towards more. And to a certain extent that is true. But the key word in this stage is undisciplined. Um,
Mm,
Relating to what your point, which you were talking about of companies that miss the point of their core business of what got them there. One of the examples in the book that the book highlights is Rubbermaid, right? Rubbermaid, their whole thing. I want to say it was like the 90s or the 80s. I would have to like check the book to get the exact like timeline, but in the past, right? Rubbermaid's whole thing was we are going to make one new product every day, create one new product every day to sell in stores. Now, that's a very ambitious goal. That is a very ambitious goal. What was the issue with that is that with the inventing one new product a day, they neglected their core, what got them to the point that they were at, because all they had to do was focus on what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing. And it wasn't necessarily uh, related to what got them to where they were at. So because of that, because of the dispersed attention, that's what caused them to reach like such a major decline. And they had to cut off like a lot of the production of a lot of these products because they were just not focused. You know what I mean? So
right.
us as like ambitious individuals, and I'm sure with like a lot of the people watching, like a lot of these people that are watching are ambitious individuals. They want to be the best at whatever that they do, specifically within business, but whatever they do, they want to be one percenters. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
And one of the things that we need to look out for as a group is don't lose the grind spirit, don't lose the don't lose the pursuit of more,
hmm
but make sure that it's a disciplined pursuit of more and not an undisciplined jumping from one thing to another to another to another.
So I have a question for you. When does a pursuit become undisciplined?
Mm. So from reading the book, it looked like, and from looking at the examples, the pursuit of more seemed to become more undisciplined once they lost focus on what got them to where they they got to. It was more so of a focus thing. It doesn't really have too much to do with the action of like putting in the work. You just have to make sure that your focus is reaching the main goal. So um people might say like, oh, you look at different businesses such as Apple, who are in multiple things. They're in consumer electronics. They're in streaming. They're in a whole bunch of different things. But the
Right.
thing with Apple is they never neglect what got them to where they got to. And yeah, even though that is a pursuit of more, it's still discipline because they have their focus on the thing that they're supposed to be having their focus on. Um,
Right.
yeah.
So going back on the example of the company that you mentioned that was releasing one product every day, just think about the stress, the pressure it adds on to that team, right? And so because you're in the obligation of releasing a product every day, it takes away um the fact that you have to maintain your culture. And culture is very important, right? Because without a great culture, people might not feel like working there. It might impact your turnover number. It might impact your productivity because of poor culture, right? So yes, pursuit is good, but you have to also be aware of the impact that pursuit has on your team. And one thing that he mentioned, one thing Jim Collins mentioned in the book is when you decide to pursue, when you decide to get into a new industry, right? The question that you have to ask yourself is, can I be great in that pursuit
Mm.
while still maintaining excellence in the operation, right? So
Mm.
companies that are they're not disciplined in their pursuit, they actually don't care much. They just jump into industries, acquire companies that probably the values do not necessarily align, and it becomes a problem down the line. Uh, but as you grow, you have to be able to maintain operational excellence. And then also something that you mentioned about is as you grow, you have to make sure that you have the right people in those key roles. You have to. You have to make sure you have that. If not, it's a formula to disaster.
That's true. And one of the interesting things, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this too. One of the interesting things about getting like the right people in those key roles, one of the things that he said is the most important thing are people that fit within the company's core values, right?
Hmm.
You don't want
Hmm.
to get a hard worker for the sake of him or her being a hard worker,
Right.
but they should be somebody that believes in the process. So I'll ask you.
Wait,
Sorry,
okay, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Now, I just wanted to jump, but don't forget the thought you had,
For sure.
which is you need to invite the right people in your organization, right? And so, how do you actually know that that person is a good fit or that person will be able to deliver on the work that is being assigned to that person? First of all, if you keep on telling the person, consistently monitoring the person, probably you made the wrong choice when it comes to hiring, right? So that's already probably a red flag. Um, and also now that that person is in the organization and not performing at the highest level, now you have to put into place regulations, um, different things to kind of force that person to perform. But the thing about that is that it has a negative impact on the highly performing people because to a certain extent they feel that they're losing the sense of autonomy just because of this other group that are not able to catch up to them. So
Yeah.
yes, I'm ready for your question.
See, I think this is probably why we have the podcast together because you literally took the question right out of my brain. I was
My
literally
fault.
about to know that the person is like a good fit.
Right.
But I mean, those are great things. I and before we move on to the next uh, point, uh, I remember listening to a podcast about the book the biography of Elon Musk by Isaac Walterson, and one of the main things that got him to the point in which he's at today is him being a visionary leader, him being very mission driven. The people that work at Tesla, the people that work at SpaceX, the people that work at his other companies, all of them have a passion for the mission that he's trying to accomplish with each of these businesses. So as we look into our own businesses, as you the viewers look at potentially hiring people for your businesses, for your projects, make sure to always keep that in mind. The passion comes first or near the top when looking for people to bring on.
Just to add on that, passion is very important, but something else you have to look into are for people that look at their job not just as a job, but a responsibility.
Yes, yes,
That's something else that Jim Collins mentioned in his book that I thought was extremely powerful. So yes, you have the official job, but more importantly, you have responsibility. You are actually on a mission.
absolutely. Because if it's your personal responsibility, you're going to be internally driven to get that thing done for sure. Um, so that leads us to stage number 3. We're halfway in. The denial of risk and peril. He's
That,
very.
that this is a is a very exciting stage.
It is.
It's not it's not exciting when you're
I
in
mean,
it.
if you're in it, yeah. Probably the opposite.
Right.
but
You're like, uh-oh.
but in looking at this chapter, like what kind of went into your head and what kind of stuck out to you when looking into stage 3?
What probably I can kind of paint the picture of what happened in stage three. So before I actually do that, it's good that we revise, right? So stage one, you are very arrogant and you think that you're always going to be successful. Stage two, because you're successful, probably because you have the money, you just starting investing into different uh industries, start acquiring different organization. Although there might be some differences, and then now stage three is when now leaders they start they're in that position in which they sorry, let me look at my note.
Hmm.
They discount negative data and amplify positive data. And now look what they do on ambiguous data. They put a positive spin on ambiguous data. So that's actually what happened in stage three.
Yes, yes, and it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to try to amplify the positive and discount the negative, especially when you're trying to motivate a team of people. You know what I mean? Uh, but it's like you're right. It's like a lot of the things that are kind of characterized in this stage. You got big bets and big goals without the data to back it up.
Right.
You incur a huge downside risk
Hmm.
based on data that's ambiguous.
Right.
The
So,
healthy.
so, so, so,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
so
Go.
maybe we can, yeah, probably we can just try and define what ambiguous is. And
For sure.
maybe it's very straightforward, but just for the sake of making everybody understand what's going on. So sometimes data might be a little bit not clear. And so because the data is not clear and nobody will know what's the truth about the data, what the leader decides to do is to put a positive spin, meaning that instead of leaning on inter on the bad, they lean on the positive. But I think the real problem there, it comes down to having the right data. And that is actually very key because if the data is correct in the right place, it's hard to get at that stage.
Mm, yes. No, absolutely. I think that the importance of data can't necessarily be understated when it comes
Right,
to the the functioning of a company. It's like everything should be measurable. Um.
right. Talking about measurable,
Mhm.
there's key measures to see whether your company is on a decline or not, according to Jim Collins. And so you have to pay attention to your gross margin, your current ratio, and then your debt to equity ratio on how do you call it on the finances, right? But
Yeah.
also beyond just the finances, you have to pay attention to your engagement, your employee engagement, and then also the loyalty from your customers. Those are indicators that you have to actually pay attention to.
Hmm. The good old KPIs, key
Right. Oh yeah,
indicators.
indicators. Yeah, always have them in front of your eyes to make sure that you're actually on track. Um, and so if you may, there's other things. There's actually some red flags and then also some green flags,
Mm.
right? That the author talks about. And so, for example, this is a red flag. People assert strong opinion without providing data, evidence, or solid arguments. That is a red flag. So now how does a green flag look like?
Mm.
People bring data, evidence, logic, and solid argument to the discussion, right? So don't just bring opinion without backing it up.
Mm.
That's a red flag. Bring your Make your argument by providing solid evidence. Um, Another red flag probably is can I have a lot of red flag and green flags.
Sheesh.
I
Say.
don't know how many we can get into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can I get into probably one more?
Let me hear it.
Okay. People shield those in power from grim fact, fearful of penalty and criticism for shining light of the harsh reality. So what happened in this stage is that people are scared because of the consequence of how the leaders might interpret them bringing into light the data that they do not want to hear about. So that's a red flag. But the green flag is people bring forth unpleasant fact. Truth hurts, but at the same time, truth is very important.
Mm.
Come here, look, man, this is ugly. And it takes a lot of courage, right, to bring those data and say, this is ugly. But this is what it takes, right, to move, to reverse the course of the whole organization and say, to be discussed, leaders never criticize those who bring forth harsh reality. So, yes, they might bring ugly data, things that you might not want to hear, but don't criticize. It's just listen.
It's facts. It's like when you're at the top or when you are a leader, you
Hmm.
don't want the yes men around you. It's like the old saying, you
Right,
don't want to have no yes men around you. You want to have the people that tell you how it is so that you can
right.
definitely, definitely agree with that. um, so we made it through stage one, right? We are on a rapid decline right now.
Oh, decline. Right.
Huber's Board of Success is the first
Right.
stage of decline.
Hmm.
Stage two of the decline is the undisciplined pursuit of more. Stage three of the decline is denial of risk and peril. So now we've reached the dreaded stage four, grasping for salvation. Not reaching, you're grasping for salvation. So
Right.
what in this chapter kind of stuck out to you the most? A lot of the things that it talked about was like the grasping the silver bullet for the one person
Right.
to be able to turn everything around, the savior.
Right.
And
Hmm.
it gave a lot the chapter gave like a lot of real life examples of like companies that tried to do this. What stuck out to you when reading this?
So yes, company try to bring in leaders probably because of the charisma and think that they'll be able to change, or they venture into new industry or acquire different things that has not been tested, or try new strategies that have not been tested, hoping that by embracing those ideology, they can reverse the course of where they're actually in. So that's a little bit what happened. They just struggling to do whatever to save the situation, to save the day. And by doing that, what happened instead of saving the day, it actually get worse and worse and worse.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that kind of mixes into the what we talked about, I believe in stage two of finding people that like fit within the core values. A lot of people when in this stage, they'll go outside of the company to get another CEO from like another company.
Mhm. Yes. Talk that talk.
They try to get a CEO from like another company to try to save the day. And what Collins was saying in his book is that for the majority of businesses, it is likely in their best interest to find CEOs that grew up within the company so that they already have the company values. They don't have to be necessarily taught it, and it's more so ingrained in them. So like once they get into the the position of power or the position of leadership, I should say,
Hmm.
then they're able to kind of hit the ground running. And
Right.
um, the problem with trying to find like the savior from like another company, at least for like CEO, is for the most part in most of these cases, there's going to be some change in like the ideology of how the culture should be run,
Right.
and that instead of doing what they may perceive, instead of launching it to success, a lot of times it makes them go on an even faster track toward failure. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. And I mean, as Jim Collins wrote this book, I mean, he made some very powerful points, man. He he basically asked the question, right, which is, I'm paraphrasing because I forgot the real quote. But it says, will the world be different if your company did not exist?
Mm, that's a
Will
bar.
it be different? That is a question to really ask yourself, right?
Yeah,
And so if you feel like you're making no impact in the community or people wouldn't feel your absence, then it's probably time to actually, you know, uh
back it up.
leave. Yeah, pack it out and get out.
uh,
Um, so I find that point actually very interesting. I feel it was a little bit tough, but it's a tough love type of message.
for sure, for sure. Um, because at the end of the day, it's like if your presence isn't felt while you're there, it's not going to be felt
Mm.
on. You know,
Hey, yeah, okay.
a lot of the times when grasping for the leader to save the company, when grasping for that savior, a lot of the times because of the novelty, there's going to be an initial upswing, and then in nearly all the cases after the initial upswing, there's a major disappointment.
Mm.
There's a lot of confusion and cynicism within the company as
Right,
well, within the company culture, because the people within the company can see what's going on.
right.
And if they aren't necessarily being, if the leaders aren't necessarily being honest with them and providing them a lot of false hope, which tends to happen in this stage, this can cause the cynicism, this can cause the confusion, and then causes the erosion of company culture, which ultimately causes a fast track towards stage five. Um, and yeah, as with a lot of companies that fail, it's the cash is an issue too. Cash tends to leak out, and once the
Wait, I can't hear you anymore.
so yeah, with a lot of these companies, the other thing that comes is like a bleeding of cash, which I mean, in business, right? Cash is king. You need to have cash in order to stay in business. Um, in the stage four, and the cash starts to bleed out, which leads them to a faster track towards stage five.
Hmm.
And stage five is the point where no company wants to reach. But stage five is disappearing into irrelevancy. So, yeah, what was your thoughts when looking at
That's it. The one thing about that stage is like once you're dead,
it's a wrap?
it's it's a wrap, you know? I mean, it's either you continue fighting, but I think at that point is when all the leaders lose hope, all the indicators are now so obvious that it cannot be denied anymore. And that is it, man. Just call it a day. That is the hardest part, but it is what it is. There's no more hope. There's no more motivation. Probably the investors are now considering continual pouring some money to the thing. So That's the time of the day where you call it a day, man. That's
Call
day
it
and
a
time.
day.
I'm
Let's
joking.
go. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
it's the point where no company wants to end up, and it's a point where a company will not end up if not going through the first four stages. Um, so in kind of looking at all of this, right?
Hmm.
What would you say is like a good practical takeaway for people who are like just starting out in their own businesses, or maybe in stage one, in stage two, and not necessarily knowing what to kind of expect or how to get out of those stages? Like, what would you kind of see would be like some practical steps that people could take?
No, no, that's a great question. I think one of um the steps that people should take is by truly be honest, right, with the people that sit on their board. Um, People that will tell them the truth, but for the truth to be told, the right picture needs to be painted. Meaning that the president, the CEO of that organization needs to be truly honest about about the situation of the organization. And once he's honest, real conversation can actually happen. So I think that's that's something truly practical. And then the other thing practical is looking at the indicators, right? Looking at all the KPIs that we did mention, but also instead of always talking, ask more questions. I think as a leader, that's very important. And then also not getting too excited about all the opportunities out there and stay on your lane. Although sometimes the best thing to do is to go out there and venture, but as long as it's discipline, that's I think the main thing. So yeah, what are your takes?
What are my takes? No, absolutely. Like I think my takes, the things that kind of stuck out to me the most, and things that I think would be the most practical that I would apply in my experience and think that would help other people, is relating to the last point of what you said of keeping the focus in the specific spot that got you to the point, or like your specific value proposition. I think it's really easy, again, as like an ambitious individual, to see uh, an opportunity arise in one place, to see an opportunity arise in another place, and to want to take advantage of like every opportunity that's thrown at you, but may not completely help the main thing that you're trying to address with your business. I
Mhm.
think it can be very easy to jump at that because you don't want to feel like you missed out. You know what I mean?
Right,
But at the end of the day, you have to realize what got you to where you're at and go full force into that and incorporate the new things and the new ventures that you go after into that main thing. Um,
keep the main thing.
the
Somebody said
main
once. I
thing.
don't know where I hear that.
Like you look at like Apple, the big four, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, um, and Meta, and AI is like somewhat of like a separate thing from like what their core businesses address. What they did
Mhm.
though is they took that wave and incorporated it to their main value proposition to kind of supercharge what they already have going on instead of doing a completely separate thing with the AI. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that was like a big thing that kind of stuck out to me. And then also another the last big thing that I could probably say is just stay humble. You gotta stay.
Sit down.
I'm about to say, sit down and stay humble. You dig what I'm saying?
Stay humble.
Because
Uh-huh.
you look at the biggest things. You look at the Roman Empire, the biggest empire in the world, fell
Yeah.
because they thought that they could never fall. You
Mm,
get all these athletes that at the top of their game, best in the world, best in the league, they fall because they feel like they already made it. They don't necessarily have to do any more. And it's the same with business. If you feel like you made it, you're already losing. Really,
oh.
that's really the extent of it right there. You can never feel like you made it. This business thing is it's a grind, and it has to stay a grind for the extent of time that you're in the business. And so, gotta gotta make sure that the head stays on, the head stays small. Don't get a big
Mm-hmm.
head and keep grinding. So, with that being said, appreciate y'all for listening into the first episode of the 1% podcast.
Let's
The
go. This is
first
exciting.
episode. Hey,
Woohoo.
hopefully you guys enjoy what we got going on. We got some more content coming. Me and Sam, we're both grinders. We both got a lot going on, but we're passionate about this type of thing. So we're gonna keep the stuff coming. Um, and if you guys have any recommendations for books that you would like us to go through, definitely reach out. We got our contact links in the bio. Without further ado, keep grinding, keep doing what you got to do, and strive to be a part of the 1%.